So let's get into the politics.
Yeah.
So what do you think about the debates and supposedly the front runner is Joe Biden?
This is the thing. I feel like Joe Biden is being marketed to us by a news media that is owned by big corporations. Like, let's give an example, MSNBC.
Yeah.
MSNBC is very anti-Bernie Sanders. And
totally.
They're owned by Comcast.
That's right.
You think Comcast wants to live in a country where Bernie Sanders takes over and starts mandating equal time for, reinstituting the fairness doctrine?
Right.
Starts breaking up these big monopolies into smaller units that are more manageable and don't control as much of our messaging and information.
That's right.
So Joe Biden is being sold to us as the candidate who can beat Trump. And I think that as people learn more about Joe Biden, I think they're going to see that he's actually the candidate that can easily lose to Trump.
Explain talk to about his actual policies and what he's actually voted on in his
He has a
record.
really lousy record.
Yeah.
Until very recently. So in 1970s, he was elected at a time when there was a lot. The segregationists like Strom Thurmond and Jesse Helms were very powerful. These were Democrats. They were Dixiecrats.
He was working with them, actually.
He was proud to be with them. He
That's
spoke
right.
at their events. He joked that Delaware would have joined the South, the Confederates, if they hadn't gotten lost on the way. And he basically got elected to defeat busing efforts, anti-desegregation legislation.
Yeah.
And Biden was absolutely against, but it wasn't just the busing thing. He was the author. People vilified Hillary Clinton for supporting that terrible crime bill that resulted in so many young people of color going to jail for a lot of victimless crimes, including marijuana possession.
Mm-hmm.
And Biden was the author of that bill.
That's right.
He wrote that bill
by himself.
And
did he have a co-author?
He was maybe I had a co-author, but his name was on that bill.
Yeah.
And he was the guy who, right before Obama chose him to be vice president, he said this incredibly racist thing.
Wow.
He said, "Well, Obama's unique in that he's a black man who's actually clean and presentable."
You're kidding.
No, I'm not kidding. It's not the exact quote, but it's very close. Go look it up. You'll see that I'm not.
Wow.
The gist of it. And I actually think that they convinced Obama to put him on the ticket because he had a much better chance of getting elected if he had a white racist on the ticket.
Obama was conservative, so
he was a conservative Democrat, and they said they'll make white people feel more comfortable. I'm just guessing because Biden has a terrible record on race, so that's the first thing. And in fact, just yesterday or the other day, he said that poor children are just as intelligent as white children.
Exactly. He also voted for going into Iraq. And people like Bernie voted against that.
That's right, the warmonger. Biden
because Bernie felt like there wasn't enough information for him to vote otherwise.
Well, there was actually plenty of information to vote otherwise. I mean, we had so much. I mean, people on the left knew that this was a bad idea. We'd heard Scott Ritter, who was the weapons inspector, testify. He talked about it, but Biden wouldn't let Scott Ritter testify. Biden was the chair of the Senate Armed Services Committee, and he refused to let any opponents or critics of this war effort testify to what we now look back at one of the biggest foreign policy blunders in American history.
Right, exactly.
Biden was the guy who was the head of the Judicial Committee when Clarence Thomas came up for consideration, and Anita Hill made a very credible complaint. And there were 3 other women who could have corroborated Anita Hill's complaint that Clarence Thomas had been sexually harassing her, and Biden refused to let them testify because he'd made a promise to his Republican friends that he would get this thing through. When Roe v. Wade was decided, Biden gave a big speech on how women do not have the right to control their own bodies. And Biden was consistently anti-abortion. He voted with Ronald Reagan's stance throughout the 80s. He supported the Hyde Amendment, which was Henry Hyde was the really right-wing Republican from Illinois, and it's the bill that makes it illegal for any money to be spent by the federal government providing abortion services to poor women. Biden supported it until May of this year.
Wow.
And in fact, that week,
while he was vice
said he
president.
Was for it. He said he was for it that week, and then some of his people must have talked him out of it. So, and he's the guy who helped push through George Bush's bankruptcy bill. And that's the reason why all these young people saddled with college debt can't declare bankruptcy for college debt.
Wow.
Because of this deplorable bill that Joe Biden was instrumental in passing.
And how come a lot of people don't seem to know about this stuff?
Because they're not talking about it.
That's
but
right.
It's
We are.
all there.
Here on the Nowman Show.
Right there. This is public record. We're not dreaming stuff up
here. That's right. What about Kamala Harris real quick?
Well, Kamala Harris is another person who has had a fairly conservative record, is getting a lot of corporate money. And because she was the DA and because she was the Attorney General, she wanted to have a good relationship with police departments, and she didn't push through real change that would have done something about the way that people of color are treated by police departments.
And she also, didn't she extend the sentences of some of these people so that it would help the private prisons make more money because they were for profit?
She doesn't have a progressive record.
Yeah.
Now, she's been running as a progressive, but she said she's for Medicare for all. And if you take a look at her bill, it's basically a 10-year plan to keep insurance companies in power.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's not Medicare for all.
It's kind of laughable to see. I am of the opinion that the one candidate who actually can win is Bernie.
Yeah, that's right.
And I don't say that quixotically. I don't say that just because it's the first time in my lifetime as a progressive lefty that I have heard somebody who has a chance of becoming a leader in this country
why would
articulate
you, real briefly, we got to wrap it up after this, but why Bernie Sanders in your view?
Well, not only does he stand for all the things that we really need, because the problems facing our country cannot be solved by corporate incrementalists, because they're basically caused by corporations. So Democrats in the pay of these corporations aren't going to solve, if you're getting money from the oil companies, you're not going to solve our desperate climate catastrophe. If you're getting money from the health insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies, you're not going to solve our healthcare dilemma.
And that's why Bernie says that we have to go against this.
That's right. We have to,
and you have to mobilize the people to go with you.
Absolutely.
So that we can demand the changes that have to be made, which is why he takes the position that he does. Millions of people need to stand together and demand change, because change never happens from the top down. It always happens from the bottom up.
Well, the thing is, as people hear him, even he's gone for the last 2 years, he's been going to red states. He'll go to West Virginia and talk about Medicare for all to a Republican audience.
That's right.
Who will give him a standing ovation at the end.
That's right.
He has a way of engaging people of all different political stripes on just the reality of it. People know that he's honest. People know he's not bought and paid for. And the other thing is he has an army of people on the ground. So, the same polls that indicate that Joe Biden could beat Trump, they all indicate that Bernie can beat Trump.
That's right.
So if we have a choice between an incrementalist who's bought and paid for by corporations, who is not going to change anything, he's going to bring us back to the same status quo where corporations own all our politicians, but we're not racist.
That's right. That's right.
And we're not homophobic.
And then there's Elizabeth Warren, who is not really as far left as Bernie Sanders is. Which
she's
it's
impressive, though. I mean, she's good. I favor Bernie over Elizabeth, but I have to say, she stands for a lot of the same things. Perhaps they'd be a great ticket together.
Well, we'll see. I mean, I also like Tulsi. I agree with Mike Gravel. I think that would be a good.
The biggest concern I have about Tulsi,
a good vice president.
She spent all her teenage years as a fundamentalist, anti-gay minister.
But she was young.
She was young.
And you remember when you were young too.
You know what? I've never not been a leftist.
Yeah. Well, I was conservative Republican because
I'm
of
glad
how
you
I was.
Came over
But when I got into college, things changed and.
Right.
You know what I mean? You do see things differently when you get exposed to more things in the world. It took me going to university to get more of a broad view of the world and make new friends to really see that, okay, the world isn't this very small little group of narrow-minded thinking.
That's why we need diversity.
That's right.
That's why we need to have affirmative action is such a powerful thing, because it allows people to meet people from other communities that they've never met. The more you're exposed to other people,
the broader your thinking becomes,
it's why
the more accepting that you become.
That's why a lot of these countries have like 5 weeks paid vacation or 8 weeks paid vacation every year, and they travel around the world and meet people. Americans if they get vacation, it's 2 weeks. It's enough time to go to Disneyland and back, or it's enough time to stay in your house, and fill up the inflatable pool for your kids. Americans don't travel, so Americans don't learn anything.
That's right.
Americans have no idea what people elsewhere think of us.
Well, it depends on who you're talking about, but I understand.
But I'm saying, as a general rule,
rule,
very few Americans get a chance to get to see the world and
meet
people from other places and hear what they think.
That's right. Well, in Middle America, I can definitely say that that's true for sure, based on experiences I had. But then, when you have an awakening, or when you have experiences that expose you, then it changes you. It's a major transformation.
It does. But Bernie's message does resonate with Middle America. Look at how he beat Hillary in the Michigan primary. He got most of the votes.
And Wisconsin.
And these are states that
West Virginia
would be in play
And
if
in
it's
Pennsylvania,
Bernie.
Ohio.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and those were the states that basically Trump got the Electoral College votes in.
Right.
So.
And if it's Biden, Trump can pull out the same playbook of running against Washington insiders.
That's right, and
he
it'll work.
can't run against Bernie that way. He'd have to come up with some other strategy.
Because Bernie's the real populist, if there is one.
If you're going to have two populists running against each other, one guy who actually stands for people and points out the real problem is the corporations that are undermining everything
That's
that
right.
own our political system.
And he's right.
It's
and if
absolutely
you,
true.
well, I get into that in another episode, but yeah, if that's, and I recommend everyone, and we got to wrap this up.
Oh, okay.
I recommend Joe Rogan's experience. You can see it on YouTube. A great interview with Bernie Sanders this week. We're talking right now. It's the top-ranked video or trending video on YouTube. It's last time I saw yesterday, it was 6 million views and hundreds of thousands of comments, and all of them are positive. I've not seen one negative one yet, and people that thought Bernie was something other than they saw him portrayed in this interview. So he could be receiving millions of new voters just from that one video. So that's interesting.